Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So, I'm excited about what we're going to talk about today because Lori and I were just kind of debriefing some things and, just kind of having conversation before we got on this podcast. And we noticed this central theme of our conversation was really centered around posturing our hearts for the abundance of what God already has for us and what's to actually come from when our heart is postured in the right place. And so when we posture ourselves to already believe and to know his promises, and there's a difference between just speaking it, and this is what Laura and I were just talking about. There's a difference between just speaking something, but actually embodying something. Actually, every fiber of your being has full belief and knowing in this promise. I know the Lord is faithful to me. I know he has a hope and a future planned for me. Do you believe that? Or do you just read it in scripture and do you have doubt or do you question it? Or do you think maybe that's not for me or maybe that's not for this time in my life, right? Sometimes I think we can take his word out of context and think that it doesn't apply to right here, right now. And it does. Every every word in scripture applies to right here and right now for you and for me individually, personally. He is a very detail oriented God. And you will find that out if you test him in a way where you just ask him something small like, Lord, bring the sun out today. Say it's been rainy all day or, all week, and you believe in your whole being, like, God answers my prayers. God hears me. I believe God is with me, and I believe that he cares for the little things I care about. And you step outside and you say, God, bring the sun today. And then he brings the sun today after it's been rainy and gloomy for 2 weeks. So, it's one thing to just say it, it's another to actually fully embody that belief. And so I want to read a few scriptures about this. Matthew 7:7 through 8 says, Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks, the door will be opened. Psalm 37:23. The Lord makes firm the steps of the one who delights in him. Who delights in him. He's going to make our steps firm. Psalm 138:8. The Lord will fulfill his purpose for me. Your steadfast love, O Lord, endures forever. Do not forsake the work of your hands. And Philippians 4:19. And my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Jesus Christ. He will meet all your needs. He is our source. He is our source of all things. And we really have to believe that. We really have to go to him and look to him as our source of all things. Not, oh, if this one area of my finances would just work out, if I could just hustle a little bit more here, then I can make ends meet here. Or, if I could just get my health in line, maybe I need to try this new supplement or whatever it is. And we're looking to all these things as the source to meeting our needs. And he said, look to me, child. I am your source of all of your needs. Yes, I might point you in a direction of, hey, why don't you try this type of food and see if that works for you? I'm not saying he doesn't use these things, right, to heal us, to bring prosperity to us, to all these things, but we have to go to him in full belief that he's our source and he's going to guide our steps. He's going to make our steps firm, just as that scripture says. So, Lori, what do you have to open up about this topic?
So much as you were talking. So the first thing that really popped in my head is me going up to somebody's door. Like, I'm going to Taylor's house and I knock on her door. I'm expecting her to answer. I don't go knock on her door and think, I don't know why I'm knocking because she's not going to answer the door anyway. Because that's what we do to God. We're like, okay, I'm going to knock, but he's not going to respond. Or, like if I go to the grocery store and I'm looking for, I don't know, a can of soup. When I go to the store to seek that can of soup, I'm expecting to find the can of soup. But how often do we seek something in God, but we don't believe that we're going to find it? And then we wonder why we never find it. It's because that power is in our belief, because we have to believe in order to receive it. So we have to be so careful where we let doubt sneak in, because doubt is a destroyer. Um, so with that in mind, I also think about the promises that he gives over our life. He'll tell us, well, I'm going to give you this thing. And then years can go by and years can go by. And we're like, well, I'm never going to get it. I'm not getting it. We stop believing in the promise that he gave us. And he really, really impressed on my heart within the last week or so that if I am, getting ready for a baby and I'm like 3 months pregnant, I'm not begging God for a baby, because I just look at my tummy. I'm like, there's my baby. She's growing or he's growing. We already know it's there. So instead, what are we doing? We're getting things together. We're expecting a baby. We're getting baby clothes and powder and diapers and um, bottles and pacifiers and all the things, because we're expecting the promise. So what really, really impacted me was the idea that his promise is our life.
Right.
Our life. It is like creating. That promise is like a baby he's creating, and it takes time for him to do all the magical things he does in the womb, in the secret place where we can't see. Those are the same things that he's doing with his promises for us. And yet he'll say, well, I'm going to bring you this amazing husband, but it's been 10 years, and I'm going to whine and cry to you. Where the heck is he? I don't believe you anymore. So then it's like, wait a minute. He's like, but you've already seen the promise. You already know what it's going to be. So why would I keep asking for something that is already alive? We do, because that doubt is a destroyer. So now not only do we doubt him, but then we doubt ourselves, because now we're like, well, well, maybe he didn't say that to me. Maybe I heard him wrong. And I don't know about you, but when I say stuff to people, I like to know that they actually heard what I said. So thankfully, we have such an amazing, loving God that he sees us in our doubt and our struggle, and he'll still love us, and he'll remind us of the promise. But we got to be steadfast, and we need to stand firm in the knowledge of what he has said, because once he says it, it's already alive. Actually, once he thinks it already is. We've got to start, and it's like a vacation. If you're planning a vacation and you already got the hotel room booked, and the rental car, and the airline tickets, you don't sit there a month before going, oh no, I want to go on a trip, but I don't think the trip's going to happen. No, you're packing your bags, you're making sure everything's done at home, you got someone to watch the cats or the dogs or whatever. You're in expectation, excitedly getting ready for the promise of that vacation. So why is it so easy for us to dismiss the promises of God if they don't come on our timetable?
Yeah, I just had a huge epiphany right in that moment of like, in our mind, when we are tangibly putting something together, like a trip, or like you said, even with the baby, like it's obvious there's a baby in my belly, right? Um, in our mind, it's that visual. So it's easy to think like, for sure this is happening, even though the things of this world are fleeting. For sure that vacation's happening. I mean, I already booked it. I already, rental cars booked, all the stuff is booked. We're leaving in a month. I've already bought all my clothes for the trip. Of course it's happening. And but yet we doubt God, whose word never comes back void. Like, it's never uncertain. So there's so many reasons why that trip might not happen. For being honest, I mean, yes, you're planning and you're expecting the trip, but because it's, in this fleeting world, and it's not a promise of God necessarily, there's so many reasons why that trip couldn't happen. But in your mind, you have full belief it is happening. You are embodying that trip is happening. But if God speaks a word to you, well, how is it so easy to go in one ear and go out the other if you don't see it manifest in 1 week or 1 day or one moment? So I think that that's such a huge lesson for all of us, and where he's really trying to develop our faith and develop our endurance, that to cling to his promises, because there is so much uncertainty in this world. And if we don't have his promise to cling to and his truth to cling to, then what are we grasping at? Like, honestly, what is what hope do we have? And so that's why he has so many promises for you and me in his word. And it's important that we read them so much that it is embodied in us, and it comes to our memory almost immediately whenever we have feelings of doubt creep up, because I'm not saying doubt won't creep up. So we need to armor up and prepare for that spiritual battle to diffuse the doubt and defeat the doubt. And we do that by remembering his promises and believing his promises. As soon as a doubtful thought creeps in, it's like, oh, I know he's always for me and never against me. Oh, I have a future and a hope. Like, oh, all these different promises that we could just, it'll just come right to our memory because we have read it so many times that we believe it. And even declarations, I'll share even on a personal level that I am walking through a pregnancy right now. And you can imagine that there are a lot of doubts in the pregnancy world and about having a baby the way you should have a baby. How, oh, this is what's expected. Get ready for no nights of sleep. Get ready for this. And it's all drudgery and sadness. And oh, yeah, you just get ready. It's never, oh, get ready for the joy of locking eyes with your baby for the first time. Get ready for that moment of love to just burst, and get ready for how you're going to mature as, a woman and a mother in Christ, you know, when you get to raise this child. It's never those types of get ready. It's always the get ready for the misery. And we just have to look at that as a whole for anything in our life. Like, why? Why are we instilling that type of negativity and doubt into people? You say, oh, get ready for this. Oh, be prepared for this. Make sure you know about this. I'm not saying live in fantasy world and not address when there are issues that come up. But I am saying that you can posture your heart and your perspective towards God's abundance and God's miracles. And so through this pregnancy, I've been learning to declare God's promise over my body, over myself, over my baby, over, what I want my labor and delivery to look like as it's aligned with God and his promises, what he actually promises for me. I'm not just like throwing random requests out there. I mean, some things are a little superficial, but God promises to answer those little things because he cares about us and he cares about the desires of our heart, that when you bring glory to me, when you honor me, I will give you the desire of your heart. And so he will, like I said, if you, God, I want to see the sun today. Here, see the sun today, child. Like little things like that, he cares about. And so why wouldn't he care about certain desires that you have for the life that he's bringing into this world through you? Why wouldn't he care about the way that you want to feel his presence at your birth and when you meet your child for the first time? Why wouldn't he care about your health and like, Lord, no, I declare that I am actually going to have a lot of energy through the rest of my pregnancy. And I actually am, not going to have nausea or sickness. And I declare that, I'm not going to have any tearing, right? Whatever, the baby comes out, just little things like that. You can declare it and believe it because God is in it. He's involved in it. He created it. So we just walk into things in life in expectancy of what the past patterns have proven it to always be, instead of walking in with faith and trust that, hey, God's bigger than that. God's bigger than that. God's bigger than that.
Mhm.
And so I think that we have to reclaim the victory that's already ours, that Jesus died for and rose again for, to give us, and walk out that victory instead of just accepting the doubt and, the despair that the worldly patterns just say, oh, this is expected. Like, even with diagnosis, I hear people going and getting diagnosed with horrible things. And, these doctors, God proves it all the time, where when someone steps out in faith and chooses to not receive that diagnosis, Sure, that diagnosis could be in their body, but mentally, spiritually, they've chosen not to receive it. They don't claim it, they don't embrace it, and then they're healed from it. So that's what living in faith and walking with Christ looks like. It's completely opposite of what the world tells you, how the world tells you to live.
Mhm. Yeah. So I think, and it's interesting because why does it seem so hard to sit in the expectation of his promises? Because I know I spent a huge part of my life in the expectation of the negative. And I've had other people, always, oh, as soon as this happens, the shoe's always going to drop. I hear that all the time. I would like to get excited, but everything always turns bad. Why do we do that? Why do we sit in that expectation of the negative, of the chaos, of the confusion, of the, I don't know. I feel like God's like, yeah, let's get out of the negative. We need to be sitting in expectation of his goodness, of his
Yep.
plan, of his abundance, of his prosperity, of his righteousness. There is so much, I mean, God is so much bigger than this world could even hold. I think that's why he had to put us in a separate place because it couldn't hold him here with us. He would take it over, melt it, whatever. But we've got to start sitting in the power of our mighty God and saying, okay, even if this doesn't look the way that I'm picturing right now, it doesn't mean your promise isn't here. It just means I got to shift my focus back to you because it's always about your plan. It's always about your will. It's always about your purpose. So I'm going to sit in expectation of all the goodness that you've got coming. You've shown me this promise or you've told me about this promise. I refuse to let go of it. Just like, and we've been talking about the vacation or the expectation of the baby. We're excited. Why aren't we excited for the goodness of God or the fact that he loves us so much, that he grabs hold of our heart and he never lets us go? We should be sitting in the awe inspired power of who he is. Why do we allow ourselves to get pulled into the doubt and the chaos and the confusion? Because he tells us joy is a choice. So even if yesterday was the biggest basket of negativity that you've ever experienced, his mercies are new every morning. We are to find joy every morning. Let go of all that junk. Come back to the expectation. Remember that he's creating life. Every promise over you, he's creating life for you and him. It's like a collection and a connection between you and him that brings him glory. He knows your heart's desires. It's easy for us to get caught up in what we think that we want because we see someone over here and oh my gosh, oh, look at their life. That is amazing. I want that. But meanwhile, God's like, if you set an expectation of that, you're never going to get that because you're not her. I have plans for you over here for you that is going to exceed your expectation. Stop looking over there. Stop
Wow.
looking at the doubt. Stop looking at the guilt. Stop looking at the shame. Start looking at me in
Yeah,
remembrance of me.
I think we have to start really dreaming with God. He says, my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. And so if we dream on our own account, and there's been times, I'll give a marriage example in marriage where, early on in my marriage, I thought that, um, okay, based off of my knowledge, based off of what I've learned through business and life and inspiration and all these things, I think that this is who my husband needs to become to really be who he needs to be for me in the level that I'm at. Right. So I did believe that. Very horrible belief. So don't recommend it. But I did believe that. And as I started really growing closer to God and he brought me through a season where I really had to lean on God and God alone. And he started working on me and my heart and raising my thoughts to his thoughts because God's thoughts are higher than my thoughts. His beliefs are better than my beliefs. So through that process, he really he really taught me. And I looked back at that season when I really believed that false, thought that, wow, thank goodness my husband did not become that man that I thought he needed to become. because I did not know what I was talking about. And so this is why we have to dream and partner with God based off of his living word, his living truth, because it doesn't change. It's always sturdy. It is a rock of a foundation. And when we try to manifest things in our own belief, in our own inspiration, and things that we've just created on our own, it's always going to fall short. It's never going to be enough. If that actually would have come true, the things that I was believing for my husband to become, like, I'm sure it wouldn't have been long after that that I would have been thinking about the next thing he needs to become. Oh, well, now he needs to change this. And now I'm only looking at his flaws and I'm perfect, right? So he just needs to keep leveling up to get to me. And God's like, all right, humble yourself, child. Let's look at your heart. Let's address some things here. And so I just love how God works in that way. That he's like, all right, I'm gonna pour some wisdom and some revelation over you. And this goes for anyone, not even just a marriage situation, but the judgment and the criticism that we put on other people in our life, or even just strangers, like, oh, that was probably the dumbest decision they could have made, or why would they do that? Or, and you start putting in your 2 cents on what you think they should have done and what you think they could have done to be better, without even like going in prayer for them with the Lord first and hearing what God has to say about it. Hearing what God's 2 cents is. And if he even wants you to get involved with that situation with a comment or an opinion, or if he's like, hey, just come to me in prayer, in intercessory prayer for them. That's what I want you to do. That's operating in wisdom. But we are so prideful sometimes that we think that we just always have the best thing to give. I always have the best opinion. My opinion's always right. And we find that sometimes it wasn't actually the best opinion. Over time, when we grow and God shows us, and you're like, wow, like, all right, God, I see you. I see your ways are higher than my ways. So I think that's just something to keep in mind about our perspective, and to really partner with God in our dreams, because he has abundance for you. The victory is already yours. So we can't experience that tangibly until we experience it with him spiritually, and we're already aligned with him and in tune with him with our heart posture. um, because I think that we can delay our abundance. We can delay what he has for us by just running our mouths too much, complaining, doubting, not really believing it. Like, we read it but we don't really believe it. um, Pretty much letting the bad and the negative outweigh the truth of his promise. And so we just have to be mindful about what we're giving attention to, what we're allowing to essentially take root and have authority, through our mouth. Because he's like, are my promises and my truth, is it planted in you? Because what's planted in you will come out of you. So it's just, I'm preaching to myself right now. I'm like, okay, God. So this is really good, deep stuff that we're talking about. But God has so much for us that we miss. We really miss it. We don't see it. We don't take the time to sit down and to have a vision with him, and to dream with him. And, sometimes it doesn't always look like, okay, here's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's where you're going to be. Sometimes he doesn't start with this massive big vision of, oh, this is what's going to be yours. Sometimes he does. Sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he's like, hey, I want you to start serving at this place. Just giving your time. You're like, okay, that's really your promise for me? Like, really? And sometimes it is. Sometimes it's something small. And it's him teaching us the obedience. Or sometimes it is this big promise. And he's like, this is where I'm going to have you one day. And so you're thinking, like, all right, this is the route he's probably going to take me on to get there. And it's going to be awesome. But then he starts asking you to do like a bunch of little things that you think have no, like, how does this get me here? Pretty much. We're like, so you just never know how God's going to do it. All he asks is for our obedience and for our heart and to believe him. Believe him for what he says because it never comes back void.
And we have to remember there's a give and a take. We can't just keep expecting God to just give to us if we're not actually willing to give in
Right.
exchange for what he has planned for us. I also want to remind us that he already has a promise over all of our lives to give us exceedingly abundantly more. We have to stop expecting little and start
Right.
expecting a lot. I know that was something I got caught up in for many, many years. I would ask for God, like, if I could just get, $100 more this week until payday. And he's thinking, really? Just 100? You could have
Right.
asked me for 1,000 or 10,000, 50,000, a million. Like, why are we asking for so little? Why are we thinking so small when our God is this abundant, amazing, humongous God that owns everything in the kingdom? And and this is what was kind of popped in my head as Taylor was talking is, so I see a friend of mine and they just bought a 1,200 square foot house on an acre, and I'm like, oh man, I really want that, God. That's what I want. I want that. Meanwhile, God's like, really? That's what you want? Because I was planning on a 3,600 square foot house on 10 acres. But if that's all you want is that, I had big plans. I was going to give you this big house because you're going to run retreats in your house, and it was going to be, exceedingly abundantly more. But okay, if
Right.
that's you just want that, be careful first what we ask for, and stop blocking God's blessings because we looking at the little when he's asking us to look at the lot. And it also makes me think of the servant that buried the talents underground because he was too
Yep.
afraid to use them,
Yep.
and then he got it taken away. Don't don't give up on your dreams. Don't give up on the promises God has given you because he'll give them to someone else who's ready and open to receive them. Because what I really felt him saying too is like, we have to give our heart to God in order to receive more of his. We can't just expect him to always be just giving us. I'm not going to work for it. I see the promise over there. Ooh, you want me to stand on a stage speaking? Oh, but you want me to pay, $3,000 to get certified as a speaker? No. So he's like, but I already promised you. I've already shown you the vision of you on stage, but you're not willing to spend my money that I've given you to step into the promise that I've given you. We've got to stop looking
Right.
at it like, oh, that's my money. Oh,
Right.
here's a business plan. It's $3.99 for you to get started. Oh, but God, I don't. No, I'm not gonna put that in there. But I still want my promise over here where I'm making millions a year. Well,
Right.
no, because you're not willing to give me a little bit of your heart to get all of mine. He's just
Right.
asked us for little. He only asked us for 10% of his own money. We think it's ours. Oh God, I can't give you 10%. He's like, no, no. I give you 100% of my money, and I'm only asking you to give me 10. I'm letting you keep 90%. It blew my mind when he did that to me. I was like, oh, he loves us so much. He lets us keep 90% of his money, and we're not even willing to give him 10.
I know that money is such a touchy topic for Christians. And, I've heard it worded this way. Like, I know there is some extremes where a prosperity gospel is the only thing that's preached, and that's not that's not all that God is, right? So, but on the other end, there's no such thing as a poverty gospel. There's no such thing as a poverty gospel. Like, God doesn't have any promise of the opposite. It's all abundance. Yes, there are references of, you know, dying to yourself and taking on Christ, but that is operating in abundance because our flesh is not abundance. Our flesh leads to death. And so, we have to really decipher the difference between a season of struggle because he doesn't promise that this life will be easy. We will walk through hardship, we will walk through storms. There's a difference between seasons of struggle and a cycle of struggle. God doesn't, that's not God's best. That's not what God's will is for us to constantly be struggling and complaining and and this and that, and it's always something, and it's always something, and it's always something. He wants more for your mind and for your heart. and for your soul and your spirit than that. And there is more than that. And so sometimes we have to go to God and just say, God, what is the more? What am I missing? What am I not seeing here that you've painted so beautifully for me, to where I'm only seeing the lack. I'm only seeing the despair. I'm only seeing this cycle of horrible things that never lead to an abundant life. And he'll show you. He will show you. And it really is just a perspective shift. That's it. Because there's people that walk through so many struggles, or some of the hardest struggles, and they have the best attitude because they're embracing and embodying God's promise that, yeah, this is just a season. He's just doing a work in this, and I'm coming out better than this. The Lord is with me. He's guiding my steps, and around the corner, we're going to see that promise fulfilled. So believing it. We're not saying that, oh, God promises we're all going to wake up tomorrow with $1 million. Like, no, we're talking about a much deeper, bigger picture here than just finances, right? And, money isn't the answer to everything. It's not. God is. And so this abundance can manifest in many different ways than just financial. It could be relational, situational. It could be, hey, a miracle of my car was broken down and we prayed over my car. And the next thing I know, I was supposed to have to get all this money and this work done on this car, and it's completely fixed. I don't have to get anything done. All of a sudden, all this debt was just wiped clean out of nowhere. Like, what's to explain that? How do I explain that? How do I explain that I just woke up and I'm healed? My wrist no longer hurts, or my back no longer hurts, or, we see people healed of cancers and just all these horrible things. That's the abundance of God. That's the mystery and, incredible work of God. And I think it's so cool that when we really embody and embrace that, his miracle work, and his just how big he is, that he's bigger than everything. There's nothing too small and there's nothing too big that he can't handle when we give him the reins of our life, when we surrender to him and take on his vision. Lord, give me your vision. Lord, give me your hope. Lord, give me your perspective. Help me see this the way you see this, because right now I'm not. Right now I can't see clearly. Right now this makes no logical sense to me. So give me your wisdom. Help me discern this. We have to start asking God for things like that, and our minds are going to be blown.
Yeah, we have to remember that God is a God of order and a God of purpose. And there's nothing that goes through him that doesn't have a reason. He doesn't ask us to walk through fires just because, this looks like fun. I'm going to have you walk through that fire. No, there's a specific reason and purpose for it. It might be just to draw you nearer to him. It might be to get you out of the fire because you've been living in lack and poverty and you don't see the bigger picture. So he's like, take my hand. I'm going to walk you through this huge fire. It's not going to burn you, but you're going to learn more about me, and we're going to get closer together, and you're going to understand more of how I operate, because I want you to operate in the same way that I operate, so that we're working in tandem. So you're not walking against me. So you're not walking against your purpose because you don't fully understand it. We can ask God for clarity. We can ask God for wisdom, like Taylor was saying. We can ask God for healing. We can ask him for all these amazing, mighty things, but don't ask if you're going to doubt, because doubt is a destroyer. Doubt comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So guess where it comes from? Because that should sound very familiar. Who comes to steal, kill, and destroy? That's exactly what doubt does. And God gave me this very powerful sentence yesterday that kind of blew my mind and other people's, because I posted it on Facebook, that said, if all it takes is a mustard seed of faith to move a mountain, imagine what one seed of doubt can do.
Wow.
And yet we do it.
Mic drop. It's so easy to spiral. It really is so easy to spiral. And it's that one seed that Satan plants. One little thought, And then that leads to another thought and another thought and a rabbit hole of thoughts. And next thing you know, you're thinking, you're feeling, you're believing that is true, and then it's manifesting.
Mhm.
You're like, see, and then you're pointing to it. You're like, see, I was right. See, yeah, because that's what you're looking for. Scripture says, "Seek and you will find." What are you seeking? What do you first ask yourself? What do I want to find? Then I'll know what to seek.
Mm.
So I
Another
think
mic drop.
that I think that's yeah, I think this is an episode full of mic drops. So I think we should end on that note.
Yeah.
Um, but thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope that you have taken away so much from this episode, just as I feel like I have. I'm like, okay, God, like I'm telling you, every time he speaks through me, he's speaking to me. So this is honestly just a pleasure and a privilege to be, his mouthpiece and learn from him. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we look forward to having you on our next episode.